Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast, a returning guest. I'm starting to lose track of how many times he's been on, which is a good sign for us, a bad sign for him that he continues to lower himself to our small operation here. I mean, talk about a welcome to the Knicks beat. You get to appear on the Knicks Film School Podcast. Fred Katz of The Athletic. How do you feel about having to continue to subject yourself to this humiliation?
It's wonderful. I had a podcast in DC and it was, like there are things where I was covering the Wizards. Like there are things you talk about in the podcast that when you put it into print, it just doesn't, it's not the same. It doesn't flow as well. You can't you can speculate responsibly on a podcast. You can't in writing.
Can you?
So it's, yeah, you can, sometimes you don't, I listen, but you can. And yeah, it's nice. It's nice to be on a podcast, have the outlet and let it flow.
I'm proud of often speculating irresponsibly. I feel like that is the only proper type of speculation. But we won't start with speculation. We'll start with just kind of where things are at. So we were texting throughout the day because you were at Knicks practice, where you heard from Coach. I believe it was Mitch. Who else was
and Julius Randle spoke.
And Julius Randle spoke.
Yeah.
Fresh off of, well, I'm not going to reference him by name. I'm just trying to think of the word that he used. Possibly doing a media boycott because he was unfair, because he felt he was unfairly covered. How was Julius's appearance today, Fred?
He was interesting. Stephen Bondi from the Daily News, I think it was, who asked him kind of what he thinks of the way that he's covered. And then another reporter asked him about, he said he doesn't take it to heart. He doesn't look into it. It doesn't really mean anything to him. He asked Bondi kind of rhetorically, does it matter? Should it matter? Bondi said probably not. Another reporter asked him if he feels appreciated. And he said he feels appreciated by his teammates. He feels appreciated by the fans. Not by the fans. Feels appreciated by his teammates. Feels appreciated by the organization. I didn't mention the fans was what I meant to say.
Okay,
but
that's a distinction.
But yes, it is a distinction. I don't mean to make it sound like he, any sort of there was like a vitriol there, but there was an energy to it. There was an energy. I'm sure you can go listen to the sound for yourself and watch the video and decide for yourself. But there was an energy to it. And look, he struggled this year. He has not been as good this year as he was last year. And I'm sure we will break it down and talk about all the nuances beyond that.
Well, I feel like he was
very good against Indiana, by the way.
He was phenomenal against Indiana. And I don't want to, I want to start by, as I think you'll agree, I don't want to look, I know they had 5 healthy rotation players, and despite how they made a couple of those guys look throughout the game, several 10-day hardship guys and who are not, quote unquote NBA players. Despite that, I thought it was still a good performance by him. I still think, especially since the guys who are healthy on Indiana, Sabonis and Turner, like those are the bigs, and those are the guys who are guarding him a lot of the time. And he's had a lot of battles with Sabonis over the years, and I think he kind of came out of this one on top. It was a really good game. It was one really good game in a season in which he has played. Hold on, I should have this up. He's played 36 games. Let's put a number. How many games would you say Julius Randle has had a good game without any context, or just how many games has Julius Randle had a good game? I'll tell you the first number that popped into my head, and I'm curious what yours is.
How are we defining good game by let's define good game as reached his level of play that he was at last year.
Oh, well, then that might change my answer. I was going to say 8, and now I feel like that might be a little high.
I think there are probably 5 games where I looked at it and I'm like, that's last year's Julius Randle. Cause to me, it's not the numbers. It's almost like this is going to sound weirdly unspecific. It's the vibe, right? It's very specific to me and anyone who's watched this team. Right. It's that he's been the last guy down in transition so many times. It's in some ways, I guess it is the numbers because the jump shot has fallen off for sure. It's the kind of lack of attacking that we see that kind of affects a lot of the game, the lack of anticipation on double teams, which I think has never necessarily been his strength, but I think he's struggled more with that so far this year. I thought he did a really good job in Indiana, just kind of like getting to the middle. And that's just not really a thing that we've seen. Like last year, he was taking more jump shots than ever. I think one misconception is like the best version of Julius Randle is when he's going downhill. And when he can't hit jumpers, then that's definitely the truth. But the best version of Julius Randle was the one that we saw last season, and he took fewer shots at the rim than he had any other season of his career. So I don't know if that's like as definitively true as people state it, but what he did do a lot last year is he was able to get middle, and a lot of those like pull-ups and followaways and all that stuff. They were after he was able to get middle, and he's kind of settled for, I think, a lot of 18 plus footers this year, which don't really come after physical basketball. They don't really come after good offense, that kind of stuff. And I think that's just what's been weird to see after he was such an enforcer last year, and played really good defense last year.
Yeah. I mean, look, I joke about it on the pod periodically that he got that lone all defense vote from some voter out there. But like, I did feel that was symbolic of a guy who his defense, I don't want to say his defense had been pilloried throughout his career, but like no one, I don't know, maybe people that you talked to thought differently. No one I ever heard of thought Julius Randle was a good defender or even an average NBA defender. And last season he at least got to average. And there were nights where you're like, wow, he's really like not, I don't want to maybe say setting the tone, but almost like when you took how much he did on offense and then you looked at what he was doing on defense, I was like, yeah, you know what? He is actually kind of setting the tone in his own way. And this season, you referenced already, it hasn't been there. So like, I don't know if this is fair to ask you because you're a beat reporter. I'm someone who is a fan that tries to analyze this team as best I can. Like, what do you think of the whole dynamic between a fan base that I think at this point we could say has like clearly turned it on Julius? There are a segment of fans that are like, how dare you say anything bad about this guy? And then there's a lot of other people who are a little bit more vociferous in their criticism. Like, what do you think of that dynamic? Do you think he's in the right? Do you think where do you come down on it as like kind of an outsider, I guess? I don't think anyone's in the right or anyone's in the wrong as long as people are acting respectfully and normally. Like the people who were like cheering that he got COVID in my mentions, that wasn't cool. That was not cool at all. I mean, look, if you're the highest paid player on a team, you're coming off an all-NBA season, most improved, and you take a significant step back through the first half of the following season, that's just what's going to happen. Like, no, I'm not a Knicks fan. I didn't even grow up a Knicks fan, but I am from New York. I am a Yankee fan. It's the exact same dynamic. Lucky you.
That's just what's going to happen. And like, I think Yankee fans treat Giancarlo Stanton unfairly. To me, that's unfair because Giancarlo Stanton went out there last year and had 35 home runs and produced and came up in huge moments and all of that. But so far, I think it's reasonable to go out there and say that Randle has taken a step back so far this season. If you're a fan, that's reacting to that is fine. Like that's okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree with you. And I guess where I push back against people who are critical of him early in the year, one, because it was early in the year, two, because I'm like, I think it is reasonable to expect an adjustment period between him and some new guys. And he's like trying to, share the ball more. And I think he was getting in his own head in terms of like, what was the right play? What was the, because it's like on one hand, he knows he needs to get himself going. Thibs knows he needs to get himself going. Everybody knows Julius needs to get Julius going. But on the other hand, it's like you brought in Kemba Walker, you brought in number Fournier, and that whole thing. And so I was more willing to forgive some of the obvious, like as you mentioned, the not always hustling back and like not always getting out on to contest corner threes. Where I kind of turned the corner, and I'm curious again what you think of this was. And I'm sure we talked about the move to bench Kemba, but after that move, and we saw that same stuff continue, that's where I started to turn the corner, because in my mind, and you wrote about it, we talked about it on the last podcast, how that move allowed them to do more switching and the whole thing. Looking back, I don't know. I think that move was about getting Julius going on offense. Do you think there's any validity to that theory?
Maybe. I have not heard that specifically. I don't think it's a crazy theory. I remember listening to your pod, I don't know, maybe a month ago or something like that, and you were kind of reeling off Julius's numbers in comparison to how many shots Kemba took in a game. If that was the theory, I'll tell you what, after seeing Kemba go out of the lineup, come back into the lineup, I don't necessarily agree with the logic.
Yeah.
Like I think at least I've seen enough now to where I think Julius Randle's at his best when there is an actual, like a real point guard, not like an off-ball style point guard, like a guy who can handle the ball and initiate the offense. And then if Randle's got to initiate on secondary stuff, that's great. But look, I don't think it's a coincidence that Randle had a great game yesterday when RJ Barrett got off to this ridiculously hot start handling the ball. Yeah. RJ has been running way more pick and rolls these last 3 or 4 games, and he's been getting to the rim these last 3 or 4 games. And what got
Randle hitting shots at the rim?
Totally. And what I think he took 14 shots in the paint against Indiana, and Indiana, yes, missing a ton of guys, and Kiefer Sykes was a huge problem for them defensively. The Knicks just kept attacking him. But Miles Turner's still there. RJ's still making moves against Miles Turner in the paint, which that's the guy who changes the shot selection for them. No matter who is guarding on the perimeter, whether Miles Turner is there or not, he's the one who you're saying, oh, Miles Turner, I'm pulling back out, Yeah. And RJ was still attacking like crazy. I don't think it's a coincidence that what got Randle going was RJ getting to the rim. Okay, RJ dumps to Randle and Randle throws down. RJ dumps to a cutting Randle and then he throws down. And then that initiates everything. And when did the offense go cold? The offense kind of went cold in the fourth quarter when Burks and Randle are running pick and roll after pick and roll. They're blitzing Burks on the pick and roll. They're giving to Randle. And instead of Randle just going, he kind of waits for Sabonis to recover onto him, and he squares up Sabonis over and over again. And he was hitting his jumpers because he played really well.
Yeah, he hit some of those shots, but that was
when the offense went a little more stagnant,
And that's not what you would call great. You can rely on those shots in the last few minutes of a game where a defense is really tightening the screws and everything else is not working. But that should not be option A with however many minutes left, more minutes left in the game.
Sure thing. I mean, I think that gets Randle on the move more. You have another point guard out there with him. He's able to be a screener more often. He's able to actually be recognized off of cuts. I actually thought he passed unbelievably well against Indiana.
I agree.
I was going to say, I thought just watching that game, I was like, he made so many great passes in that game. I know he only had 4 assists, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to look this up. And normally you see a guy with 4 assists, maybe he's got 7, 8 potential assists. And I just looked it up because I was curious. He had 13 potential assists in that game. I mean, that's a ton. That's a hell of a game. An efficient 30 points with 13 potential assists. I mean, the potential assist is exactly what it sounds like. It's just he made the pass. If the shot goes in, it's an assist. And a lot of those looks were open. A lot of them were threes. I mean, I thought he played a really wonderful game. And I don't know. Thibs said before he went into the protocols that he was nicked up. And we asked Randle today, what specifically were you nicked up with? And he just kept repeating, I'm fine. And credit to him. I
was about to say credit to him.
Doesn't want to make excuses because Thibs was pretty definitive. He was dealing with something, but we don't know what it was. We don't know how serious it was, but maybe just 5 days not playing gives him a little bit of a rejuvenation. Because if you are feeling like that, then what would you do? You'd start to play a less physical brand of basketball.
So I completely agree with every word you said, and you're 1,000% right. Logically, he does, and anyone who's watched him knows this is true. Logically, he does better when there's someone else running the show, and he is not the one who is kind of behind the driver's seat. And yet, it never, the first go round, to me at least, it never felt. Something felt off always when he and Kemba were on the floor. And obviously, the on-off or the net rating numbers as well as I do with all those lineups. And then when Kemba came back, I thought it had moments, but it was almost like Kemba saying, and you wrote about this recently for The Athletic, Kemba was just fuck it. You're going to stick me on the bench for however many games it was. I'm not, missing this next possible last chance. And he went off, and Julius was kind of, was a secondary person, but not in the same way he was secondary last night. Last night, there was still an aggression, and he was still, as you said, had the ball in his hands, making decisions, but it was just in a different way. And I'm left with I shrug my shoulders because I don't know what it is other than does he like playing with RJ Barrett more than Kemba Walker, or am I just, again, trying to figure out something that you can't figure out? I don't know the answer.
Yeah. I mean, look, secondary option doesn't necessarily mean fewer touches. It just means getting your touches in different ways.
Yeah.
Getting your touches on the move, getting your touches off of screens. Okay. Not all the time. And it doesn't mean you can't even square up a defender. Just means doing it in slightly different ways, and it may be different points in the possession. I think they look better when they have someone to initiate the offense. That's part of why, like I wrote a thing a couple days ago when they had all their guys in protocols, and I was like, I don't think Emmanuel Quickley is a point guard. I know there's this movement amongst the fan base that it's crazy to
amongst some
at point guard,
amongst some in the fan base.
I don't think he's a point guard. I don't. I think he's a scorer first. And he's like, your typical, at least at this point in his career. Maybe he'll get better. Maybe he'll evolve, whatever. But at this point in his career, I think he's your typical instant offense combo guard kind of guy. But they've needed someone with Kemba and with Rose out just to initiate offense. Like Burks can run a pick and roll for you, and Burks can, run an action for you when you need it every once in a while, but he's not the guy who's like initiating your offense every play. So when Burks has played point guard, Randle has been the offensive initiator the vast majority of the time. You need different looks. And I think it just takes a burden off of him. It makes the game easier when you're not the guy initiating from 20 feet all by yourself as often as he is.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. So the news today, as you reported, we're talking on Wednesday night. So as people listen to this, it'll be Thursday. So the news yesterday that you reported was that the MRI on it wasn't what actually did they say it was an MRI? I'm assuming it was an MRI on
just
Kemba's name.
Test results.
Okay, whatever the hell that means. Maybe they banged it with a little hammer.
He took the GMAT.
Well, apparently he did well enough that he gets to move on to the next round. So I if you had to guess, I don't know. Again, you were there. Was your feeling when I know what Thibodeau said, but was your feeling that we're seeing Kemba tomorrow night against Boston? There's going to be a couple games. What do you think?
I don't know if it'll be tomorrow against Boston. I don't know how the Knicks are going to list him. They might have already done it while we're podcasting right now.
Andrew looked at us.
I don't know if it'll be tomorrow against Boston. He did very little in practice today. It sounded like, when Thibs says a guy did a little, but not much in practice, that usually means he did the non-contact stuff. If he's not doing contact stuff, it would probably be skipping a bunch of steps to put him back out there against Boston on Thursday. But maybe it'll be the game in Boston on Saturday. Yeah. I mean, they keep saying day to day, they keep this stuff very, very close to the vest. So I couldn't tell you I wouldn't be betting on which day Kemba's coming back, but just, history tells us you like to see a guy get a day of contact in before he ends up coming back from something that's had him out for as many games as Kemba has.
So staying on the Kemba point for a minute, because this season has been I feel like it's been now, this is we're on our fourth iteration of whatever this season is supposed to be. It's you had actually maybe more because you had that hot start where everybody was hitting everything that was not sustainable. And then you had the slow downturn, which led to the Walker benching. Then you had Walker on the bench, didn't get better. Then Walker came back, looked great. And then everybody, all the key guys went into protocols for a few games. And now RJ has gotten going again, as you referenced before. And I think, and I don't know what there is to say about RJ other than it's good when he looks the part of a number 3 overall pick and like is making tough shots at the rim. Like, what do you say about RJ's performance over the last few few games. I mean, it's good, right? I mean,
it's totally good. I didn't think he was great against Toronto, but I thought he was good against Oklahoma City. Yeah, I thought he was good against Oklahoma City. I mean, the Thunder have no rim protection. Like Muscala, Roby, like those guys are not intimidating anybody in the paint. But you know what? RJ said, great, you're not intimidating me either, and actually took advantage. And like so much of RJ is just whether he decides to be assertive or not, you know?
But I don't want to cut you off, but with Kemba now coming back, because that's just exactly where I wanted to lead you to, is that too many cooks in the kitchen? Because we is it that RJ's decided to be assertive, or that the people around him are making it so that it's easier for him to be assertive?
A very fair question. I have no idea what the answer is.
Nor do I.
But it's a very reasonable question because look, they had nobody against Oklahoma City, and clearly I don't even think you have to say anything to RJ. It's like he can look around and be like, okay, there's nobody here. I have to do something. And he was just weaving around pick and rolls and getting to the rim. I don't think that was necessarily the case with the Indiana game, for what it's worth. They had guys against Indiana, and he took for perspective, like he averages 4.5 shots in the restricted area a game, and he took 10 in that game again against Miles Turner, and he took
that's
four more
lot.
in the paint. It's a ton.
That's a ton.
Giannis leads the league in restricted area shots a game, and he takes 8.7.
Yeah.
So that's your perspective. Like that's a 10 is a ridiculously high number. If someone averaged 10, they would lead the league by a ton. Yeah. Like it's a really, really, really large number of shots to get in the paint. And he made 8 of them. He finished really well. The expectation should not be, and he got to the line, I think 8 times.
He got 24 trips to the line in his last 3 games. I'll beat that drum until it breaks. That's the biggest thing he needs to improve, is getting to the line more. But totally. I digress.
And that's a big way for the Knicks to prop up their offensive efficiency too. They could stand to get to the line more.
Well, they don't get there at all, especially when you look at some of the guys on this team, and like they should be getting to the line a lot more than they are, and hitting your free throws would be nice too. But anyway,
yes, for sure. But I think with RJ, like, a lot of it starts with his ability to get to the rim. And I think on nights that you see him, and that's a big thing that Thibs talks about all the time, and I completely 100% agree with him, that when RJ and Julius just get a head of steam going to the rim, their offense in general looks better. So much of their offense changes. Like I talked about Julius's 13 potential assists against Indiana. Part of the reason why was because he was just getting to the paint. Then he was just kicking out to guys, and Indiana was collapsing on him, leaving guys open on the perimeter, and they missed a lot of shots. Other guys missed a lot of shots, and he happened to get really hot with his jumper, but he was able to find guys because he was hitting the paint with such momentum and such force. And I think a similar thing is with RJ. I don't know if it was funny. I asked Mitchell Robinson today when he was talking if he thinks RJ is a better pick and roll partner than he was 2 years ago. And Mitch was just like, nah, I think he's the same. And
but I don't know if that's necessarily wrong. Like it's so funny to bring that up. I remember, my God, I did this with Spencer Perlman it was like one of the first games RJ played in Brooklyn, I think, where he like hit Mitch on a few pick and rolls. And I'm like, wow, I wasn't sure if we were getting that right out of Duke. And like, you know, if you look at his assists per game, or not per game, per 36 minutes, it's like it's pretty much the same. Like it hasn't really gone up.
Yeah, so it's just, he's so it all comes in flashes, right? Yeah. That's why I tend to be hesitant with RJ, because he tends to go really, really hot or really, really cold. But the reason, and it's why I'm trying to analyze more the actual shot selection and the process of the shots than the fact that he had 32 points in that game and 19 in the first quarter and was just looking great. Because I don't think the only reason he looked great against Indiana was because he made shots. I thought his process was actually quite excellent. And a lot of times it's just like RJ's hitting his shots. Oh, RJ hits 5 threes tonight, so he looked great. Oh, yeah. RJ went 1 for 8 from 3 tonight, so he looked bad. And that's just kind of how we judge it. But I think a change that process, that ability to get to the rim his ability running those pick and rolls to get to the rim. Like that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
No,
we need to see more of it before we can say it's an actual thing to continue.
We do need to see more of it, and it has come in fits and starts. And like the number I looked up today, which was encouraging on cleaning the glass, is that he's 59% at the rim this year, which is still not great. It's in like the 39th percentile for wings, but he was 54%, 55% respectively in his first 2 years. So 59 is like, it's not a huge jump, but it's also a big enough jump that you're not going to like ignore it. If that number can tick up even a few more percentage points, but then even as I say that, it's like, all right, well, he was making everything at the rim for those like 4 or 5 games there at the beginning of the season. And he's been making a lot at the rim over the last 4 games. And then in between, it's like he's not really doing anything. So you need the consistency. It sounds like you think that Kemba will go back into the starting lineup. Do we have any reason to suspect otherwise right now?
No, okay. I'd be surprised if he didn't. With Rose out, and I'd be surprised if he didn't. What's the Thibs line? I view Kemba as a starter. Oh
yes, that's right. I view Kemba as a starter.
I think you've used him as a starter. No, I would be really surprised. I'd be really surprised.
Okay. So whether it's against Boston at home, whether it's in Boston, that'll come soon. Got RJ, Julius. Same question for Mitch. If you had to put money on it, you think Mitch goes back in the starting lineup as well once he's?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Really? Interesting.
I asked Thibs why he decided to go with Taj last night after the game or Tuesday after the Indiana game. And I thought the answer, this is why I asked the question, even when you think you know the answer. I thought the answer was just going to be, Mitch was coming out of protocols and we didn't know what his stamina was going to be like. And, if he was only able to play 16 minutes or something, it made more sense to start Taj. And he didn't say that. He kind of just gave a not particularly specific answer and talked about how he liked Taj, and all those guys are used interchangeable, which is not anything to call the presses about. That's like, word he uses about all the guys who play at similar positions. I thought also that it's possible and didn't want to say it. Taj Gibson they really struggled with Miles Turner and picking up pop centers with Mitchell Robinson starting. So maybe he was just playing the matchups. Miles Turner hit 7 threes against them, and they could play like Julius guarding. They could cross match 2, Julius guard Miles Turner and Taj guard Sabonis, which is a little more. You might want to do that more with Taj. So that might have been a reason to, but I don't know. I would think that Mitchell Robinson will start. I think he's been playing a lot better lately. I
agree.
Think, but I'm going to go like 80% Mitch starts.
Okay. We'll hold you to that. You heard it here, folks. 80%. That's basically like 100%. So Fred Katz is guaranteeing that Mitchell Robinson is going to start. Yeah. I don't want to get into a whole Mitchell Robinson discussion or even a discussion about the center position. I do think it's worth noting that, as you kind of started to say, it has been so inconsistent this year. And not coincidentally, it's been a little bit better because Mitch has played better. And I think Taj has been in for Noel. I don't think Noel's played particularly good this year either, outside of, again, a couple of moments here and there. I'm very curious to see what happens. He's played what has he played? Like 10 games this year? It feels like he's played about 10 games this year. I'm sure it's more than that, but
he's played, I think, 17 games. Noel.
Okay. So I'm a little off, but it feels like it's been about 10.
It feels like he hasn't played yet. Yeah. Because he's had so many different things, Yeah. And it always feels like he's on the verge of coming back, but then it ends up being another game, So I feel bad for him. It's been a tough year for him. He's had so many things. He had the knee, and then he was in protocols for like a really long time. Like I see so many people asking, it's been 10 days. Why is he not out? It's like this virus hits everybody differently.
It is non-discriminatory. It doesn't matter. It's like it's going to treat you how it treats you.
It's been 2 years. We should know at this point.
We
some
should
people get it and they're fine, and other people get it and they might be in their 20s, and it's not any sort of life alarming situation, but it is a really crappy few weeks, and it's hits everybody differently. So I feel for him because he was in the protocols for a while, and he's had a tough year.
Yeah, he has. And again, like you said about Julius, I hope for his sake he's doing well. Although at the same time, I'm not sure I'm looking I'm like super excited to see him back on the court because I do think there's an argument that the team's two best centers are the guys who are healthy and available right now. A couple more before we finish up, but you mentioned him before because you did write about Obi recently. He's become such a lightning rod in the fan base, obviously in particular. He going from 45 minutes to 10 minutes. I think even with Julius having a great game, rubbed some people the wrong way. I get asked a lot, and I honestly don't have a great answer, so I'm just going to ask you, and maybe you'll have a better one. Like, I don't think Thibs has it out for like Obi Toppin, or like Thibs is like much harder on Obi Toppin than otherwise. I just think it comes down to he knows very well that Julius Randle's his best player. As my daughter's enjoying a ice pop here, and he's trying to get Julius Randle going, and he wants to put his best player on the floor and give his best player a chance to be successful. I'll ask my daughter this question later, but in your opinion, do you think that's really what it comes down to? Do you think there's more to the fact that Obi gets 10 minutes in so many games?
I think it comes down to Thibs' love for rim protection. That's what I think it comes down to. And that, look, you don't have to believe what the guy says. Just follow his actions. He wants to play a rim protector however much as possible. When he's had player personnel authority, he's wanted to get them. And the way he builds his schemes puts an extreme emphasis on taking away everything from the paint. He's a huge believer that a guy like Noel, like Taj, like Mitch, that those guys aren't just shot blockers, that they kind of do that concept that I was talking about with Miles Turner, where they're gonna alter shot selection. And he just doesn't want shots going up in the paint. He really, really doesn't. And when you play Obi and Julius together, you'll play faster and you'll score more, but it takes away the rim protector. And to me, like with Thibs, this is not a style thing. Like when people frame it as a style, this is the style he prefers to play. That's wrong. That's not what it is, because style changes, style goes in and out, style adjusts to the fads. This is an ethics thing. Thibs' basketball ethics.
I love that you put it that way.
His basketball ethics start and end with rim protection. And that is what he believes. And that is why people are like, he's stubborn about it. It's like, yeah, because it's not style. This is his belief system. This is his religion. Religion is rim protection to Thibs, and rim protection is religion. It's the way he thinks about this. So that's why I don't think it's an Obi thing.
He also might not be wrong. I mean, the last two NBA champions, Milwaukee Bucks, had 2 7-foot defensive player of the year, either winners or candidates. Team before that, the Lakers had, I mean, Christ, you can't fit more big guys on the same team, and they just packed the paint and did not let people score easily at the rim. And you could, we don't have to go through all of NBA history. People
talk about Golden State going small. It's like, yeah, they can go small because they have Draymond Green.
Because they have Draymond freaking Green. Yeah.
The greatest defender in the league probably right now, and is 6'7", but is an incredible rim protector. That gives you a luxury. I think there's a decent chance Thibs will be going small with Draymond Green too. He really, really believes in the power of rim protection. And I really think that's the reason why. I honestly think that's all there is to it.
I think that's really well said. Okay. 2 more and then get you out of here. One, I'm going to reveal a text question that I think you asked me first, but I've been asking myself this all season long. So I figure we just talk about it on the air. Who's been the Knicks' best player this season? So I think when you first asked me, I think this was a couple of games ago, I think I said quickly, but I was like, but I feel like maybe it's Burks, but I think my official answer was quickly. And I think since then, and you phrased it better than me, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it was something along the lines of if you consider how guys have performed in the role that they are, this is their role and this is what they're supposed to do. I think I'm going to have to go. I think I'm going to have to go Burks now among healthy players. I think Derrick Rose had.
Yeah, Derrick Rose is the answer. Yeah, if we're going.
Yeah, amongst guys who are not healthy. But what do you? Is it Burks? Is Alec Burks the best player of the Knicks this year? It sounds crazy to say.
Alec Burks has been the best player in his role on the Knicks of the healthy players. It's a lot of qualifications, but yeah, I think that's true. He's been really good for them. I mean, he's been the one contract who the one guy who they re-signed, they were brought in this summer, who you're like, all right, that contract's looking real good. I don't think they do or should regret the Rose contract, but there was obviously injury risk with that. Yeah. And Rose was great and totally living up to it, but there was obvious injury risk with that. And now the injury risk has come up and shown why it was a risk to begin with. Burks is the one who I'd be like, okay, Alec Burks for $10 million. He's going to play like this. Bargain.
Sign me up.
Yeah, just he's done a little bit of everything. He's weirdly shooting really poorly inside the 3-point line.
I know.
I think part of that, I would have to look into this more and really watch film, but I bet you part of that is because he hunts fouls so much in the paint.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
He throws his head back and takes these off balance shots to try to show off contact so often and sometimes they just don't call it. So I feel like that probably affects his 2-point percentage. That said, it's working. He's actually getting to the line at like a ridiculously good rate. His free throw rate is incredible right now. He's guarding multiple positions. They played him at point guard, even though he's not a point guard. And like, I can't imagine what more you would want Alec Burks to do playing that role. He's hit big shots. He outscored an entire NBA team for like 15-minute stretch last week. Like, I know the Pistons are bad and have no players.
Like a quarter of an NBA team.
Alec Burks legitimately scored 20% more points than an entire NBA team over a 15-minute stretch to close the game. Like, that's outrageous.
It is.
That is ridiculous to think about. I think he's been huge for them this year. I think he's been look, ideally Alec Burks is like a really, really good role player coming off the bench for you. That's the role that you want him in. And he's had to jump around, but I think he's been really good for them. And I don't know who the answer is. Like, who have you looked at and been like, that's the role that guy's supposed to play?
Well,
that's what he's done. And he's been better than that.
I think there are some people who would say Obi because his role is to come in, run like hell, which again, you phrased it really well. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to quote you. Toppin is a different, more modest type of playmaker. And you talk about how it's his movement and what he does without the ball, but it's not that he's like an off-ball threat in terms of shooting, which is what usually when you talk about guys who are a threat without the ball, you say his greatest strength is his movement. And you nail it with that. I don't know that I could say Obi Toppin because he is just so dependent on other players setting him up and like getting him the productivity that, we love from him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Obi's been really good this year. He's been really helpful off the bench. He's a more limited player than Burks is, and he's a less refined player than Burks is. I think it's a fair answer. But look, I mean, for example, there was that game in Toronto, not the most recent one, 2 games ago.
The 90-87 game, I think. Yeah.
Right. And Obi was looking like he was going to close that game, if you recall. And Toronto starts to play a zone and just not guard him. Yep. And Thibs pulled him from the game. And it was one of those moments that you were kind of alluding to before, where I think a lot of people were like, how are you pulling Obi? He's already got a career high 19 points. Yeah. He's playing great. And all that stuff was true. He was playing really well. He had changed the game, and he did have a career high 19, and he was really helping them win until that point. But once the defense adjusted to him and was like, we're just going to leave him in the corner and we're not going to do anything. That motion, like when you get into the half court, if the defense is ignoring you, it'll help you, but only to a point. Like, it's only going to help you to a point. Eventually you've got to be able to hit down a three. You've got to be able to create something for yourself when the other team isn't guarding you. And that's why Thibs pulled him. And I thought that was a good substitution, to be honest. And I think there are too many moments like that where Obi has to figure out, okay, when they're not guarding me, he's got to hit 30 some odd % of the corner threes or something else in order to take that next step.
Well, you just got me to look it up as we're talking. John Collins, first 2 years in the league with the Hawks, 34 and 34.8% from three. I don't have the corner breakdowns in front of me. Last 3 years, 40.1%, 39.9%. This year, 42.7%. I'm not saying John Collins has a legitimate all-star case, but like he's on the periphery of the outside of the all-star conversation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he's a very good player.
He's a really good player, and he's been paid $25 million a year. And I think most NBA teams would be like, yeah, okay, that's about right. And I'm not saying that that's what OB becomes if he gets the jumper. Cause I think Collins is a really good player. But that's how important it is, because without the jumper, like you said, he just becomes so much easier to guard. Okay. So you led me to my last one, and it's, I intentionally ordered it this way because I asked you to put your prognostication cap on, which I'm sure you have handy. What is it? It's January 5th. So 34 days from now, 35, 36 days from now, February 10th, trade deadline. What do you think will be the tenor of things at that time? Could you see them? And I referenced the Burks conversation we just had because I think he's the most likely candidate. Like some team out there, I'd be shocked if some contender, if the money worked out, wouldn't give up a late first round pick to acquire Alec Burks. Maybe I'm not shocked. I'd be surprised if somebody didn't do that. Do you think there'll be sellers? Do you think we're going to get a move in addition before then? Like what, or do you think they're going to sit tight? Like, I know we're a long ways from there, but what would you, if you had to guess right now?
I honestly don't know. Like, I really don't know. It's been so hard this year because, especially with the protocol stuff, like we just don't have as great of an idea of exactly where they're going to be. They're only 3 games out of 6.
It's crazy. It's insane to say that.
Yeah, they're only 3 games out of 6, and they have an easy schedule still these next 3 weeks. And it's like, I'm not saying they're going to be in the 6th seed come the trade deadline. I'm just saying if they're still only like 2 games out of 6, I don't think they're just going to like tear it all down. You know, the East is really, really, really jumbled, around play-in range and a little above it and a little below it. Depending on Kemba's health and depending on how Rose is doing in his rehab, they said at least mid-February for Derrick Rose. The trade deadline is February 10th. If Rose's timeline ends up being what they initially expected at the time of the surgery, he'll be back after the deadline. If Kemba's not all the way healthy, I think whether you think you're going to be awesome or whether you think you're going to be terrible, I think you need to go out and get just a competent point guard, because you're just not going to develop the guys like Obi Toppin, Mitchell Robinson, if you don't have a competent point guard to help make them get better. So
you're talking about if we fast forward about a month and there are still significant health questions surrounding both of these point guards, you would go out and potentially make a move for a point guard. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, not something massive, but there are a lot of point guards who I'm sure are acquirable. You give up a 2nd round pick and get some body back, and you
got Derrick Rose for a 2nd round pick.
Exactly. Include Kevin Knox for salary, and that gets you $5.8 million right there.
Poor Kevin Knox.
But I don't know what they're going to end up doing, because like the East is so close, and I quite honestly, I mean, it's my job to figure out what this team is, and I can't say with full confidence exactly. Like what do you think they are? Like, do you think they're a 9-10 team? Are they a 7-8 team? Are they a miss the play-in team?
If you ask me to put money on it right now, and again, I feel like to answer this question, you have to like have X-ray vision into the front office, and like, does Brock Aller have more of Leon Rose's ear? Does Tom Thibodeau have more of Leon Rose's ear? Because I would wager some money that those two guys may not approach the trade deadline with exactly the same intentions. I would probably bet on them being either in, I can't believe I'm going to say this because I think this is probably too high, but I'm a fan. What can I do? I would say either 8 or 9. And even that feel, because I think they will, I don't think Thibs is going to let off the gas. I don't think they're going to sell at the deadline if they're even close to in the race. And I could see them making a little move because they have the Charlotte pick. They have the Dallas pick. They obviously have all their own picks. I'm not sure what that move is. I would have bet anything that they would have traded for Miles Turner. And now I'm really not sure. So yeah.
Mitch is playing much better too.
He is.
Which helps alleviate that a bit. Yeah. I mean, that would constitute as a big move for me. I mean, that's a big move. He may not be an all-star, but like going and getting Miles Turner, that's a really big move. Yeah. I don't know. They could use a lot of things is the thing. Like they could use a point guard considering the health of their point guards. They could use another wing. Like they could really use another wing, especially if Alec Burks is going to play this much guard. Like they could.
No, but it's funny you say that because again, it shows the different perspectives. There are so many people out there who like give Grimes like 30 minutes a night. And like, I'm not going to lie. There's a part of me that would like, I wonder what, how Grimes would look. Maybe not 30 minutes a night, but like he's a first round pick. Give the kid 15 minutes and see what he does. But if you're playing Quentin Grimes, a rookie who was just what was the 27 pick in the draft, 15, 20 minutes a night, like you're probably not a great team. Like, but what is their intention this year? I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I really don't.
I mean, I think their intention is they want to make the playoffs and try to make a run when they get there. I think that's their.
You think they still, okay.
I think they'd have to really seriously fall off in order for everyone in that organization to get on board, just tanking to the end of the year.
Okay.
That would surprise me. That I don't think that's going to happen. They'd have to like really fall off. And I don't think they'll fall off to that degree. I don't.
I don't think they will fall off to that degree either, which is why I said 8-9. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're better than that. The
other perspective for what it's worth is I think Randle, like if you talk about players in terms of like ranges, like us podcasting together can only be so bad and it can only be so good, right? There's a range of the quality of us.
I don't know if you've listened to enough of my podcast, my friend. That's really kind of you to say. Thank you.
Like, I don't think that we can reasonably, I don't think RJ Barrett is maybe he will just continue on this trajectory for the year that he's having for the rest of the year. But I don't see a scenario where RJ Barrett all of a sudden hits a new floor after this and plays worse. Like I don't either. I agree with that. I don't see a scenario where Julius Randle all of a sudden hits a new floor and plays worse. Like I think this is the worst that Julius Randle is going to play this year.
So we've seen rock bottom. And actually, I'll add one more to that. I can't imagine a scenario in which the chemistry between, again, presuming he ever gets back on the court, Kemba Walker and Julius Randle and RJ Barrett is worse. Like maybe we have seen the worst. That's a really good point.
And yet they're sitting there at 18 and 20.
18 and 20.
And
easy schedule.
You know what? It's plausible that this is just kind of the year Randall's going to have, and it's going to be an off year. And it's plausible this is the year Barrett's going to have, and it's going to be an off year. It's also plausible that because RJ Barrett's really streaky, it's also plausible that he hits 36% of his threes the rest of the way and gets to the rim 10% more than he did now, and things are a little bit better, and they play 5-20 ball the rest of the year. Like that's not a crazy hot take,
You know what? The Vegas over under before the season, 41.5. And I can't do the math off the top of my head, but if they played about 5-20 ball the rest of the way, I'm pretty sure they would get to about 41 wins or whereabouts. So I don't know. Maybe that's worth it. Maybe this has been a very long-winded way of getting to like exactly where the people that get paid to do this for a living thought they would end up. This has been a lot of fun. Fred Katz, before you go, can you please tell the folks at home who somehow still need reminding where they can find you and your stuff?
Yes, you can read my stuff over at The Athletic New York. If you're on social media, you can follow me on Twitter at Fred Katz. Instagram is Fred Katz NBA, where I keep saying I'm going to post more content. I keep saying it. I haven't really done it, but I keep saying it.
One of these days.
But I do tweet, so you can follow me on Twitter at Fred Katz. You can read my stuff over at The Athletic.
Oh, shit. I just remembered. We forgot to discuss neither the Denzel Valentine era or Denzel Washington movies, which was the other thing we said. Do you have a favorite Denzel Washington movie?
Inside Man.
Inside Man. Okay.
Inside Man is the best bank robber movie ever made. That's my hot take.
Andrew, you have a comment on that?
I believe you've never seen the movie Heat. If that is the thing you're about to say,
Inside Man is the best bank robber movie ever made.
Have you seen Dog Day Afternoon? Maybe.
Inside Man.
Okay.
Is the best bank robber movie.
I love it. But you know what I love about this? This is a defensible take. It's a really good Spike Lee movie with a great Denzel performance and several other. I think it's a really nice Jodie Foster performance.
Owen is incredible in that
Owen's
movie.
fucking awesome in that film. I just had on Closer the other night, random Clive Owen performance.
Children of Men is the
Children of Men's
Clive Owen performance.
I'm gonna go. I'll just so I could answer my own question. I will go with my favorite Denzel performance is. Man, this is really. I know this is gonna sound. I'm such a sucker, and the movie has not aged well. But like, Philadelphia always does kind of get me.
Oh,
I know it's
solid. Sure. No, it's not a bad.
Glory is a great movie.
Glory's pretty great. I mean, there's so many. Anyway, okay, that's a good one. Inside Man's a good one. I like that. Anything else, Andrew? Before we let Mr. Katz out of here.
I'm saving all my Denzel Washington takes for a different podcast.
I get so nervous. I get so nervous when I say anything TV or movie related now, because I know like now that I cover the Knicks, Alan Sepinwall is like lurking behind me. Is going to be like, that's a bad take. Listen, monitoring my TV and movie takes.
Alan is not the be all end all of TV takes. He probably is. But
it's just I imagine Alan listening to this to the same way that I would listen to like a movie critic being like, Enes Kanter is an unbelievable defender. That guy just fights.
I listen. I have a lot of terrible movie and TV takes, so it's not just you. But yeah, so we'll do TV takes next time. In the meantime, thanks for coming on, and you're the best.